Do you ever check your bank account at night for no reason at all? Not because a payment is due, not because a deposit is expected, not because anything changed, just because. The number is the same as it was 3 hours ago. You already know that, and you still look. Theo checks his bank account at 11:47 at night, not because anything has changed, not because a payment is due or a deposit is expected, or some alert fired on his phone. The balance is fine. It was fine at 9:30 when he checked then too, and at 8:15. And briefly, in the parking lot of the grocery store, while his frozen food was sitting in the trunk going soft. The number on the screen is the same number it was 3 hours ago. He knows that. He still looks. And the strange part, the part he hasn't said out loud to anyone, is that the looking isn't about information. It's about something else. Something that feels almost necessary. Like taking a breath. Like checking that the stove is off. Like a habit that got so deep it stopped being a habit and started being a reflex. This is where it starts. Not with a crisis, with a check. Most people will tell you they hate financial stress. Ask them directly, and they'll say it without hesitating. It's exhausting. It keeps me up. I can't wait until things settle down. And they mean it. They're not lying. But watch what happens when things actually do settle down. When the card gets paid off, when the raise comes through, when the emergency fund finally hits the number they decided was safe. Watch what happens in the 2 or 3 weeks after that. Something shifts, not in the account, in them. A new worry surfaces. The car has 80,000 miles on it. The roof is aging. The job feels less stable than it did last quarter. The relief doesn't stick. It passes through them like a season, and then it's gone, and they're back in the familiar hum of low-grade financial dread. Not because anything went wrong, because something went right, and the nervous system didn't know what to do with that. Theo knows the cycle. He's lived inside it for 11 years. He's not poor. That's the thing. He makes $74,000 a year doing project coordination for a mid-sized logistics company. He has a 401k that he contributes to, inconsistently, a savings account with $6,200 in it, which is more than 57% of Americans have in liquid reserves according to numbers he read once, and retained with the specific precision of someone who reads those statistics compulsively. He owns a 2017 Subaru Forester with no payment left on it. His rent is $1,340 a month, which is high for where he lives but not catastrophic. On paper, Theo is fine. By most measurable standards, Theo is stable. And yet, the 1147 check, the quiet crawl of worry that follows him into rooms he doesn't invite it into, the specific, low-frequency tension that lives somewhere behind his sternum and never fully disappears. He's not running from disaster. He's carrying something. And the uncomfortable truth, the one he's only recently started to sit with, is that he might not actually want to put it down. There's a word for it now: financial anxiety. The clinical community has been paying attention. 58% of Americans report feeling anxious about their personal finances as of recent survey data. 62% say they're anxious about paying bills. Nearly half say it's worse than a year ago. But those numbers describe the prevalence. They don't describe the function. They don't explain why someone with a stable income and a positive net worth still finds themselves refreshing a balance they already know. That's a different question, and it's a harder one. The body has an explanation, even if the mind resists it. When Theo checks the account at 11:47, his brain is doing something specific. It's looking for a threat. And when the cortisol system gets trained over enough years of actual financial uncertainty, a layoff at 26, 3 months on a credit card that took 2 years to clear, a period of eating meals that could be assembled for under $4, it doesn't neatly shut off when the threat is gone. It stays primed, ready, scanning. The neuroscience on this is relatively clear. Chronic financial stress literally rewires how the brain processes risk and uncertainty. It trains the nervous system toward vigilance in a way that becomes self-sustaining. The elevated cortisol that helped Theo stay sharp through the hard months didn't disappear when the hard months ended. It became his baseline. And his baseline started to feel like normal. And normal started to feel like safe. This is the part that takes a while to understand. The stress became the familiar thing. Not comfortable, not pleasant, but familiar. And familiarity is something the nervous system mistakes for safety with a consistency that would be funny if it weren't so expensive. Theo grew up watching his mother do the same math in her head every time the family sat down to dinner. Not on paper, in her face. The quiet calculation running behind her eyes while she passed the bread. He learned early that money was a thing you worried about, that the worry was appropriate and responsible and showed you were paying attention. He learned that calm was either temporary or naive. He learned, without anyone ever saying it, that the worry was the responsible position, that vigilance was love, that checking was care. And now, 30 years later, he's sitting in his apartment at 11:47 with a bank account that is fine, checking it. For the fourth time today, because somewhere deep in his nervous system, the checking still feels like doing something. Psychologists call it a regulation strategy. That's the clean, clinical version. The less clinical version is that financial stress can become a kind of low-grade occupation. Something to do with the part of your mind that can't sit still. Something that fills the cognitive space that might otherwise hold nothing. And nothing is much harder to tolerate than worry. For a nervous system that learned worry first. It's not that Theo wants to be stressed. It's that the absence of stress produces a different kind of discomfort. An unfamiliar quiet. A feeling of something unattended. Like he's missing an appointment he can't quite name. And so, without consciously deciding to, he finds the next thing. The roof comment from a neighbor. The article about inflation. The mental math on whether his emergency fund is really enough. Whether $6,200 is actually a number, or just a number that feels like a number. Whether he should have more. What more would feel like. Whether more would even help. It wouldn't. He knows that. He's watched it play out enough times to know. The account hits $7,000, and the question becomes whether it should be $10,000. It hits $10,000, and something about the investment allocation starts feeling uncertain. The target moves. It always moves. Not because Theo is irrational, but because the stress was never actually about the number. The number is just where the stress lives. Move it out, the stress finds a new address. This is what money dysmorphia looks like from the inside. Not dramatic, not loud, just a persistent, low-frequency disconnection between what the account says and what the body believes. He can see the $6,200. He can read it. He cannot feel it as safety. Those are two entirely different experiences, and they don't communicate with each other the way you'd expect. The specific architecture of this misalignment is worth noting. The rational part of Theo, the part that can do math, that understands percentages and risk distribution and what $6,200 actually represents in terms of purchasing power or time, knows he's fine. It can construct an argument, it can cite statistics, it can do the calculation from both directions and arrive at the same conclusion. But the defensive part, the part shaped by memory and repetition and those early lessons about vigilance, doesn't care about the argument. It cares about the feeling. And the feeling is older than logic. The feeling is not enough, not safe, not yet. Check again. The two systems coexist in his mind without ever truly integrating. One is making sense, one is making noise. And the noise, unfortunately, is louder. There's a compulsive quality to it that Theo doesn't love admitting. He's checked his account while on a date. Not because anything was wrong, because 30 seconds of silence while his date was in the restroom and his hand just went there. Automatic. He's opened his banking app in the middle of a conversation at a party, not looking at anything, just opening and closing it while nodding along. He's woken up at 4 a.m. with a specific number in his head, a bill amount, or a subscription charge, or a vague sense that something was drafting that he hadn't accounted for, and gone to check, and confirmed that everything was fine, and lain back down in the dark with the cortisol still running, unable to sleep for another hour and a half. Not because there was a problem, because the brain generated the sensation of a problem convincingly enough that the body responded as if there was one. This is the cycle. Threat signal. Check. Temporary relief. Silence. Threat signal. Check again. It operates almost exactly like a compulsion. The literature on this is fairly blunt. The short-term relief from checking is real. That's what makes it stick. The problem is that the relief is short. It lasts maybe 6 or 8 minutes before the brain finds something new to flag. And each cycle of check and relieve trains the system to need another one sooner. The window gets smaller. The checking gets more frequent. A person goes from looking at their account once a week to once a day, to several times a day, to whatever Theo is doing at 11:47. Not because the financial picture got worse, because the pattern got more established, because the nervous system learned, accurately, that checking provides relief, and it wants relief, and it will ask for checking the way it asks for water after salt. The avoidance version runs the same way, just in the opposite direction. Some people stop checking entirely. Don't open the mail. Let the statements stack up. Don't look at the balance because looking feels worse than not knowing. And not knowing has a quality of possibility to it that the actual number might destroy. This isn't laziness or irresponsibility. It's the same nervous system, same threat response, different behavioral output. Both patterns, the obsessive checking and the total avoidance, are doing the same thing. Managing a fear that has stopped being proportionate to the actual financial situation and started being its own separate system. Self-referential. Running on memory and anticipation rather than current reality. The avoidant version often comes with its own set of consequences that compound quietly. Missed payment deadlines. Unexpected collection calls. The very thing the avoidance was designed to prevent. But that outcome, paradoxically, can feel almost validating to the nervous system. It transforms the abstract fear into a concrete problem. At least then the worry had something real to attach to. At least then the vigil. Ants wasn't just paranoia. Theo has done both. Different seasons of his life, different versions of the same loop. What nobody tells you about financial stress is that it has a texture, a familiar weight. It sits a specific way in the chest. And after enough years of carrying it, you stop noticing when it's gone. The absence becomes strange, unsettling even. The moment things actually settle, the month where nothing broke and every number came in where it should and the account held steady, something in Theo goes slightly off. Not depressed, not anxious exactly, just a low hum of wrongness, like he's forgotten something. Like the calm is temporary and suspicious, and the responsible thing would be to find what he's overlooking. And so he looks, and he finds something. He always finds something, because the world is large, and money is connected to all of it. And if you go looking for a financial concern, you will locate one, guaranteed, every time. This is the addiction nobody names as one. Not to spending, not to gambling or shopping or any of the behaviors people recognize. An addiction to the stress itself, to the searching, to the specific neurological experience of vigilance, which the body, at some point, began to confuse with competence. Staying stressed started to feel like staying on top of it. The worry started to feel like protection. Like if Theo stopped worrying for long enough, something would slip through, something would catch him off guard. And being caught off guard, having something go wrong that he hadn't anticipated and tracked and braced for, felt like a failure more unbearable than the stress itself. So the stress became useful. It became the thing that proved he was paying attention, responsible, not naive, not one of the people who didn't worry enough and then got blindsided. The cost of that is not small. It's just slow. Chronic cortisol elevation over years has a well-documented effect on the body. Elevated blood pressure, suppressed immune function, disrupted sleep architecture, inflammatory markers that compound quietly across a decade. Theo sleeps about 6 hours a night, wakes once at minimum, usually around 3 or 4, and takes 40 minutes to get back under. He's had 3 colds this winter. His doctor told him his blood pressure was something to watch. He is 39 years old. He does not connect these things to the 1147 account check. He connects them to stress, generically, the way everyone does, and moves on. The mind is good at keeping those categories separate. It's easier that way. Easier to feel the symptoms as isolated facts than to trace them back to the source. Easier to accept the blood pressure as just part of being an adult in a modern economy than to consider that the economy isn't the problem. That his relationship to uncertainty is. That the checking is the thread you'd have to pull to unravel something much larger than a bank account balance. Here's what's actually happening at 1147. The brain surfaces a financial concern. Not because a concern exists, because the brain is trained to surface one at this hour, in this quiet, when distraction drops away and the threat scanning system kicks up into the space left by everything else going quiet. The phone comes out. The account loads. The number is there. It's the same number. Theo reads it, waits for the relief, gets a partial version of it, sets the phone down, and lies in the dark. The system is satisfied for now. It will ask again in the morning, probably before coffee, possibly during. He will comply, because complying is the only thing that produces any relief at all, even the short kind, even the kind that lasts 6 minutes before something new surfaces. This is what 11 years of that pattern looks like. Not a crisis, not rock bottom, just a man in a quiet apartment, financially stable, lying in the dark, waiting for the next check to feel necessary. And it will. It always does.